Good to go. Good evening. I call this meeting to order at 6:23 p.m. Tonight we have present directors Teitler, DeFreitas, After, Ramirez, and myself, meaning we have a quorum. Thank you to our interpreter. Astrid, would you please share the interpretation instructions with our participants, and then we can turn on the interpretation function. Good to go. The first business in order is the approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Directors, you've just approved the agenda. The first item on the agenda this evening is our opening celebrations and updates by our superintendent, Dr. Anna Cole.
All right, good evening. Couple celebrations tonight. Last Friday was one of our few all-staff professional development days for our early childhood staff. So this room was packed with maybe 80 of our early childhood educators, partners, and the ability to pull that team together for a PD day all together is really the outcome of our strategic planning process from the early childhood team a couple of years ago. The training last Friday focused on strengthening evidence-based pivotal practices, which are really essential evidence-based components of high-quality inclusive early childhood programs. And inclusive early childhood programs are those programs that are privileged to serve students with disabilities and inclusive classrooms. We had supporting our early childhood leaders. What last Friday focused on. No worries. We had Denver University's Positive Early Learning Experiences Center. We had a couple of researchers and professors and consultants from the Pele Center were here. We had support from the CDE's Department of Exceptional Student Services, but the real work was our early childhood leaders who really led the training during the day. And we're really grateful for the early childhood families. We know that can be an inconvenience when the programs are shut down, but the investment in formal professional development for our full early childhood team is really meaningful to support the professionalism of our early childhood staff, educators, and our programs. So really grateful for that opportunity to have everybody together. We are in the heart of testing season in our schools, so really want to share some gratitude for everyone supporting CMAS and PSATs and all the assessments. Stephanie just reminded us that those kinders are going to be doing their dibbles coming up. So there's all kinds of assessments happening right now and opportunities for our students to show what they can do. And we cannot pull these testing opportunities off without incredible community support. So really want to share some gratitude for the students who are working really hard to stay focused and persist and endure the rigors of these tests. We also want to thank the teachers and school staff who create just really stable, warm, supportive, and focused environments for our kids to do their best work. For the parents who are out there making sure their kids are fed and rested and also are ready to endure the rigors of this work. And just grateful for the teamwork and hoping our students continue to just show off what they can do in all those tests. Next week is the PSAT at our high schools. And again, I know that high schools are really working to try to figure out how to make all that happen in one day. So it's quite the effort. And then we'll move into next Friday, a well-deserved April break with no school. And then we have a staff PD day on Monday, the 22nd. And so this is a time to really celebrate a lot of testing, opportunities to check in and see how students' growth and achievement is doing, a lot of professional development still happening. It is also a season for celebration because our seniors are starting to finalize post-graduation college and career decisions. And so a lot of decisions are getting made and opportunities are getting solidified. I think a lot of folks have been watching the news. We've had Daniel Scholarship winners, Betcher Scholarship winners, some of the really big kind of gigantic, cool, local, regional scholars we have here in the district. We'll be celebrating them over the next coming weeks and months. We also have students receiving college acceptance letters and lots of scholarships rolling in and lots of decisions being made by our seniors about what their next steps are in career or post-secondary education. So congrats to all of our seniors and early congrats. They still have, I think it's a good 36 days of school left, something like that. So just want to celebrate that crew. And that's all we have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cole. Our next business in order is a safety summit presentation from Dr. Cole.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you guys are going to be sick of hearing me talk. Okay. So over the course of this, the superintendent report today is really a summary of the community safety forums that we held during the month of February. And the purpose of these was to establish a community vision of school safety and get feedback on current and proposed school safety strategies. So we really felt that this, our first commitment to our kids, to our staff, to our communities, that our schools are safe places. We know that safety is a very complex idea and defined differently for different folks. And so we've really leaned in as a district on trying to really wrap our heads around, are we doing everything possible, reasonably possible, to keep our schools safe this year? And this was the crux of a lot of that work. And so we held community meetings in all three of our major communities. We had about 40 participants that in the English language meetings and about 60 total participants in the Spanish language meetings. So great. We felt it was a pretty strong turnout. We had student meetings at all of our high schools. So you can see the breakdown of who attended. You can see kind of an example of the flyer that we shared. The agenda, the forums were pretty highly structured to make sure we had time to get community feedback. So we ran a completely English language forum with Spanish interpretation, and then we ran a completely Spanish forum with English interpretation. We previewed the current state of safety, the way we think about safety across the district and the strategies we used. We shared data. We talked about some of the risks. We had our community partners show up and attend and provide some assessments and expert assessments of where they felt our strengths and vulnerabilities were as a district. We also then moved into really helping participants explore a couple of targeted strategies that we pulled out and we were really looking for more input on. And if anybody's interested in actually seeing some of the data or the information that I'll share on these slides in more detail, the actual exhibits that we set up in the room with posters with a ton of information are downstairs in the main hallway. So that's kind of what the forums looked like. And I'm going to fly through a bit of the information that we covered, but it'll all be in the board packet so folks can view it there. It's also on our website. We talked a lot about the 5 pillars handout, really covers all the strategies that we use in the district to support student safety. And what you can see here highlighted are the strategies that we really wanted community input on during these forums. We shared some context around our current attendance data, some behavior data for this year, and also some student survey data. I think an interesting point that I'd like to just draw folks' attention to is that bottom right, the 2023 Healthy Kids Colorado survey that our students completed this past winter. Over 93% of our 6th through 12th grade students reported feeling usually or always safe at school. So that's a helpful indicator that we're on the right track. Let's see. I'm kind of taking you through a little bit of the slides from the safety forum so you get an overview of how we worked through this. So you can see that we then created space for expert evaluations. And the headlines from that work, from hearing from one is an expert who's now internal. We have a new safety and security officer, Dustin Gehring, who's actually here. Dustin, if you could say hey. The board and the community will be hearing from Dustin at our next meeting as we start to dive into the safe schools policy, and he'll be sharing some of the additional work other than supporting these community forums. Dustin does a ton, and he'll be providing the board with an update on some of the work that his role as school safety and security coordinator worked on this year. So you'll hear more from him at our next meeting. What we heard from our partners, so we had our chiefs of police in each community speak. Dustin spoke, and he'll tell you more about his background when you get to meet him, but his experiences in doing safety evaluations for schools. So Dustin spoke on our strengths and growth areas. Our chiefs of police spoke, and then partners with the Aspen Hope Center who work on school-based mental health also spoke. The strengths that all our partners called out in our schools was the relationships, the culture and climate in our schools as being really the core and heart of some of the best levers we can pull in terms of student safety. Strengths in terms of partnerships with our police and nonprofit partners in making sure that the things that start to fall outside of our scope, that we have resources and tools to support. And then also we heard a lot from our partners about the strengths in the procedures and the drills and the tightening up of that kind of work. And that's really a testament to Dustin's leadership and the way he's been supporting schools in some of those technical components of making sure we know how to respond to crises. Some of the gaps that were pretty consistent across all our communities was open campuses. And as many of you know, our high schools have pretty porous structures where kids that have free periods or at lunch, our high school students can move freely in and out of campus. That has really been viewed by a lot of our expert partners as a real point of vulnerability because we're not able to manage school entrances and exits. Another gap was consistent use of the safe and secure entrances in all of our schools. A 2015 bond really made sure that we had the double-doored entrances to every school and need to be using them more consistently. And then another gap that was really shared by our expert partners was stable and consistent funding streams for school-based mental health services. Where we went next was we really pulled out a couple of strategies and took a deep dive. And this is where I'll share with you the slides with the specific information, but what happened at the community forums was then we set up exhibits on each of these topics and we had expert partners at each station. Participants moved around, talked to folks, really looked at funding streams and best practices and where we are currently, where we want to be, and provided a lot of feedback for us. I won't go into a ton of detail on these specific strategies. The information will be in the board packet. If folks want to come and see the posters, again, they're downstairs and up and available. But the particular pieces we talked about was our school resource officer program. We looked at current investments that we make in the Roaring Fork schools for that support. We talked about school-based mental health and our current goals in terms of staffing those positions, making sure that those resources are available to kids. We looked at the various funding streams that support that work right now. It's predominantly been externally funded because this work for school-based mental health, we believe, really pushes outside the scope of the purpose and intent of our K-12 funding and our work and our expertise. So we talked a lot about that. Lots of information about where the funding comes from those partnerships. We talked about secure entrances and exits and looked at a lot of the best practices and things that we're doing consistently and gaps where we need to improve. We also looked at school culture and climate as really being the heart of a lot of our work. We talked about our investments that have come as a result of the Learning Acceleration Plan in some school deans of culture in our schools and the work that they're doing to really strengthen our relationships, strengthen consistency, strengthen positive school climates and consistent responses to behaviors. And we also spoke with participants about communication, especially crisis communications. Are people getting the information they need? Are the resources there? And really looked at how we could strengthen all of these components. So where I really want to kind of take you is now what, so what? What did we learn and where are we going from there? And so the key findings here are highlighted in gray, with in green kind of our next steps and follow-ups. And so the one thing that we heard that was great was a real affirmation that what we believe is our superpower and our highest leverage strategy, we also heard resoundingly from our community that we need to keep really focusing on school culture and climate, on the relationships that we build, on making sure that we have trusted adults in our schools who can help kids access resources when they need them. So we're going to continue that work, and it's also tied and will be evidenced in the strategic plan. With our first priority is really around students first, and it's around making sure our schools have those inclusive, representative, and welcoming environments. We also heard that folks wanted us to update our work in prevention education, especially when it came to drugs and alcohol, tobacco use. And as you all know, we've been working on small components of the health education standards. And so we're committing to continuing that work and the complete health curriculum adoption into 24 and 25. We heard strong support for our school-based mental health services. And so we are going to continue to explore partnerships with our counties, with our towns, through grants to really stabilize that funding. Our goal is to ensure that there's a school-based mental or behavioral health provider in every school. And right now our staffing model looks at having 2 at Glenwood Springs High School. We do that in a lot of different, the predominant partner that we have for that is the Hope Center, but some of our schools do staff those positions internally. Number 4, we heard that families were really interested in understanding and how they could access more adult mental health services. So we're going to do a better job sharing the information and the resources. Our FRC does a lot of work around this, but we just want to make that more visible, that they're a great first stop for adults getting access to adult mental health care, as kind of through resource and referral. We don't do that internally, but we can help families access care externally, but with external partners. We definitely heard that secure entrances and exits are a priority and need to be strengthened. And we heard a lot of community support for folks saying, hey, we're willing to slow down at the front door. We're willing to sign in. We're willing to put the badges on. And so Dustin will speak a little bit more about that, but he's developing a more robust training plan for the 24-25 school year to make sure that there's more consistency around our use of the tools that we have for secure entrances and exits. This question of open or closed high school campuses is really complex. And we heard enough that leads us to want to continue the conversation. We're not making any decisions on this, but we heard enough support from a diverse number of stakeholders that said, we think you need to keep talking about this and you need to keep working on it. And so we are going to work with high school leaders this spring and develop kind of a process and a timeline for continuing conversations. We're not anticipating any changes in 2024-25, but we're going to keep that door open, and we're going to be deliberate about continuing to have conversations of how we can really look critically at those very porous natures of the way our high schools are currently working. We heard finally, last 2 items, that our SRO partnerships received consistent support. A lot of our SROs are beloved members of our school communities. Families also pushed us that they wanted more clarity on the roles. And you're going to see in the safe haven policy tonight where a lot of those pushes for role clarity have been codified through that safe haven plan that really details what the role is of a school resource officer in our school and how they're aligned with our commitments to our kids and families and community. And so we really are so grateful for the partnerships we have through the SRO work with our chiefs of police. And we're really excited to move forward, getting more clarity about those roles. And then finally, in terms of communication, folks just wanted to know where to get all this information all the time. I think people really appreciated getting to see so much context and so much detail about this work. And so we're going to continue to update, especially our website, the content that's on our website related to safety through this spring and summer so that all this information is more readily available. And that's where we're at.
Thank you. We'll now move into board discussion. So each board member will have 2 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes to discuss as a group. And we'll start with Director DeFreitas.
Thank you for the staff time and energy that went into those forums, and for circling back to Glenwood and making sure that they were part of the conversation. I know that was a lift, and so I appreciate that time. I'm interested in so we talked a lot. I know SROs are going to come up a lot tonight, safe haven policy and everything like that. I'm interested in what you've heard from local law enforcement partnerships. What do they identify as the value there? Like, do they recognize a relationship bridge? If they were here in the room to say, this is why we value SROs, this is why it's worth having them from the local law enforcement perspective, do you have the confidence to speak for them, or what have you heard?
Definitely not to speak for them,
Right.
but I would say that the work that we have done with our chiefs of police in Basalt, Carbondale, and Glenwood Springs in alignment around role clarity, that the SROs, what they are and what they are not in the schools, is really consistent across those 3 law enforcement partners. There's a ton of support for that relationship building work, for the education work. I think our school teams really value having a law enforcement partner to help with consultation, frankly, with helping families navigate. Often if they're tangled up in legal systems, it's nice to have someone that families can talk to who feels familiar, who feels like a member of their school community. So those partnerships, I would say the work that you're about to see in the draft, the proposed safe haven policy, is a result of a lot of these really close and careful relationships that we have with those chiefs of police. They're very aware, all of our chiefs of police are very aware of the harm that has been done by SRO partnerships in the past with the Roaring Fork schools, and is working really hard, especially with with Glenwood Springs, Carbondale and Basalt chiefs to really make sure that this work is aligned and that we're very clear about what we're doing in the schools. And so it feels like we're in a really good place with those partnerships, with those chiefs.
And on kind of a different, maybe off-topic track, is there a standard training or statewide or national certification to be an SRO? Or is it, oh, yeah.
You know, I don't know the details. I can absolutely get back to you on that. I know that even some of our chiefs of police have sat on a lot of those kind of statewide commissions around school resource officers, but I don't know the specifics. So I don't want to misspeak, but I do know that there's training and resources.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Tytler.
I want to just start out by saying some great information that you shared, and especially great job with the reduction of out of school suspensions, seeing that cut in half. That's amazing. And so thank you for the work that's gone into that. And I was also really appreciate the panorama survey results about student belonging. Those are just really great results. And it does talk to the culture of the importance of having relationships be first. So I think that's really important. I have a couple questions. The first one is, I'm curious about the thoughts behind raising the percent of the SRO salary from 25% to 75%. Like, why the jump from 25 to 75? Where did those numbers come from?
So the initial contract and that proposal was developed last year when we had a different chief operating officer and a different superintendent. And what we understand of the rationale there, and I say Ben jump in if he did, was that what we were striving towards was kind of a 50-50 split for the positions. And what we were naming by taking on 75% of the salary was the additional, we were taking on 75% knowing that the actual investment for the position as a 12-month position, not the 9-month that we receive support, also includes investments from the departments, the police departments, in vehicles, technology, resources, equipment. And so I believe that that's why we were moving towards that 75-25 split. There's not a standard in the country of how these partnerships are split. And if we look at our neighbors, it ranges from the Aspen School District, where their town and county are paying for 100% of their SROs, to RE2, where they are paying they're more of that 75%, 25% relationship with their school resource officers. What the board will see in the upcoming budget is a stable investment around a consistent investment to safety and security moving into 24-25. We were not able to, I think the information that we received from the forum said this is fine where it's at, although we share a sense that like an ideal staffing ratio would be more SROs, but we heard from the community kind of it feels like the right touch and the right-ish, I mean, depending level of staffing right now. And we just weren't able to advance that as a funding priority. And so you all are not going to see us making movement in the current iteration of the budget because we're just not able to advance that priority of an increase to SROs. Now, what you will see is this year we had a contract with Garfield County to staff an SRO at Riverview, which, as you know, we've canceled that. But the ratios were off in that regardless, moving into 24-25, where we were funding, almost the same amount of money was paying for one full-time SRO at one school. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense when we're also paying the same amount for one SRO in Glenwood Springs, where nearly half of our students are. And so that is, if we're able, we would like to be able to, again, with all of our partnerships, at least, especially if there's contracts involved, be able to match inflation and invest a little bit more into the partnerships. And so what we're hoping to be able to do in 24-25 is reallocate the Garfield County investment to our partnerships with the police department in Glenwood Springs, Carbondale, and Basalt. We're still working on the details there, and we'll be working with those police departments in town and city managers in the coming weeks on those details.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, is there any amount of like resource that they offer us if we're given 25% versus 75% of the salary? Then are they increasing their amount of time from 25 to 75%, or?
You know, right now, the partnerships have all dedicated a full FTE SRO, and each department works a little differently with their SROs and what other competing priorities they have on their time. And so it works a little bit differently, but I think if we got up to a 75, it really wouldn't fundamentally change probably the time investment is my sense. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Just one other question about concerning mental health. There was that page that talked about on-call counselors from the Aspen Hope Center. Do we know like how many of these calls are done by month, by year, by week?
Yep. We do track that. In fact, we have a district wellness committee meeting focused on school-based mental health next week on the 16th. And I just reached out to Aspen Hope Center saying, hey, I need our most recent updated crisis numbers for that meeting. And so I can share that with the board. But that is something that we track, is those on-call crisis calls that we call for suicidality or for threats. And, you know, a positive indicator this year has been that those numbers are lower than they have been in the last probably 2 years.
Okay, thank you for sharing that when that comes around.
Thank you. Director After.
Thanks. This was helpful and interesting. Do you usually sit up there during this?
Yeah, we decided that because I have a mic, I could say right here.
Oh, okay. I feel like
It's easier.
feel a
I
little
can totally
off.
move next.
no, they were fine.
A little bit of our
Whatever-
stage
whatever-
direction.
I just felt like something was different. Do you, as a school leader and an expert in this area, do you feel like our schools are less safe with fewer SROs?
That's a great question. You know, it's interesting when I think it depends. I think it depends on how we define safety. The SRO's job is they're not security guards at our school.
Right.
You know, they're really there to build relationships. What we do know is that the stronger relationships we have with students, whether it's an SRO, whether it's a dean of culture, whether it's a teacher, the more the safer our kids are because they share their needs or they share their worries about their friends. And I would say our biggest lever again is relationships, because it's through relationships that we get kids connected to resources. And I know that the relationships that we have with kids saves lives, because kids share what they need and we can get children and families connected to resources immediately when kids are not safe because of choices they're making or because of their mental and behavioral health. So I think that trusted adults make a huge difference. And we know that that's what the research says with adolescent and children's safety. I think perception of safety really matters. And, you know, whether an SRO increases someone's sense of safety or compromises someone's safety is really personal. And our families and our kids range across the board on whether I would say SROs support or compromise safety. I would say, generally speaking, the relationships we have, the SROs we have, are incredibly personable people. We've really, I think, because of the alignment and the work with our chiefs of police, they've done a phenomenal job recruiting SROs who care deeply about building relationships with kids and staff and families. You know, when we ask, we have our own safety experts, and when we ask the police, what's our number one vulnerability? They'll tell us it's the front door. It's the doors being propped. It's the movement of kids in and out of the door. There are things that we can control that are within our control that don't cost a thing, that will probably have a stronger impact on the safety of our schools, I think, than necessarily investments and additional staffing. But it's complicated, to be sure.
Yeah, thanks. Does the school or the district hire the SROs, or do the jurisdictions?
The chiefs of police hire and employ the SROs.
Okay.
Yep.
And then are they trained in mental health
That's a great question.
service or leadership or?
I don't
skills?
know the details of what they're trained in. But I will definitely get that back to you all in what that training looks like. And I know that the SRO type trainings are very, they lead with that number one goal is relationship building. And so I would be shocked if in the standard SRO trainings, there is not a lot on trauma-informed practices and mental and behavioral health.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that because if
Yeah.
if the number one, and if one of their highest values for us is as relationship builders, and I agree that the ones I've interacted with are wonderful and very, very personable and very, very kind and empathetic, then it'd be good to just know that they're trained in that way as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. I don't have any other questions right now.
Thank you. Director Ramirez.
Thank you. And just to follow up with director after, I think it'd be important to also figure out if they have any training around developmental disabilities, including autism. I think it's super important to be aware of that. So thank you to the team for the work on this. I did have a follow-up question. I was wondering if you could tell me what the breakdown was at each high school in regards to families that are represented.
I can share that with the board later.
Oh,
But
okay.
Yep.
To slide 14, in regards to the SRO program overview and your breakdown, I just wanted to clarify, this breakdown is, I saw it included charters and private. So I'm just wondering when we're saying like 7 schools, we're including St. Stephen's, for example. Okay. So are we paying, is our portion covering them being SROs in private schools?
Yes. So our portion, we pay 25, the city allocates 75% and they cover all the schools. So private schools, charter schools, preschools. Mhm.
Okay.
And we haven't tackled that, pushed back on that. Thus, it's a pretty, our contributions are small.
Right now, right?
Right now.
At 25%.
Mhm.
And so I think I support SROs. I think that it's important for us to have security in schools. And so I really and I love our SROs in Glenwood. So I'm really grateful for the work that has been done on that side. I think I just really want to push our team to find funding elsewhere. And to that point, I just wanted to ask, like, where else have we reached out? Like, I'm wondering if we have started making those connections or questions to whether it's the commissioners or whether it's the councils or whether it's the foundations. I just really want to know what we've done thus far.
You know what? I would say we haven't been as aggressive on identifying other funding streams with SROs as we have with school-based mental health. And I would say part of the reason is, and I'll own this as your interim superintendent felt that before we rushed into finding more money, we needed a theory of practice and we needed to get aligned on what are we doing? Like, what is the shared goals and outcomes of the SRO positions? And I felt like we didn't really have a strong theory of action when I stepped in August. And so before we basically paused the contract and we said, whoa, hold up, before we go to $500,000, $600,000 of 75% of 4 positions, we'll hold right with what we committed this year. And we're going to take some time to step back, talk to our community, understand, build a theory of practice, build a rationale, understand these partnerships, make sure that they're aligned with what we're trying to do. And if we can get to that point, then sure, let's talk about funding and let's see what we need to get after. And so I feel like we're at that point now. Like, I feel like we've gotten really clear. We've heard from our community. We've calibrated the positions. I think we're seeing in the safe haven policy the components of the role that our community feels we need to be really thoughtful and deliberate about. And so I think now we're at that phase to say, yeah, what are we in this for? And I think that one of the questions that I've definitely carried through this work, and I bring it up a lot with our team, is like, whose responsibility is this work, is the work of SROs, is the work of school-based mental health? Because it starts to feel very much outside of our core mission and vision. as a school district. And when we're about to head into budget season and we're trying to stretch and push those dollars, we want to make sure our staff are supported and have livable wages. We want to make sure that we have the right skilled people in front of the kids that we have and to meet their needs. And sometimes some of these partnerships and this work feels amazing to have these resources in our rural schools, but sometimes it starts to feel outside the scope of what we should be paying for. And I think we've benefited incredibly from, both the school-based mental health and the SROs. The majority of that payment is coming, the majority of the investment is coming from our towns, from grants, and from one of our counties. But I think, you saw that in the next steps is like, how do we stabilize this? Because right now those funding structures are very, they're not stable. And so it feels tricky, which is why kind of where we're going next is to take our findings from this work to our towns, our elected officials, and really say, hey, can we imagine a more balanced model, a more stable commitment to these roles that we feel like we have some shared responsibility for? And could we find a better way to think about the investment in these types of services in our schools that feels more maybe right? But I will say, like, we haven't gone after grants when it comes to SROs and safety and security yet. I think we're always looking at grants for school-based mental health, but I would say in terms of your original question, I know this was a long answer, but I think we haven't been ready to go after additional funding for SROs until now. And now I think we feel a lot clearer on what we're trying to do and why and how. And I think I share your concern of, how do we stabilize this funding and where does it come from more consistently and stably?
When are you hoping to have them finalized?
Well, we have to have them in place before the next school year. So this is really a work of the spring, probably early summer if we're really pushing it late. But this is really our work in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks.
So I guess just to follow up, then my suggestion would be that I think to Director After's point on what their training is, if we can include that in the MOU of that being something that we see as essential and a requirement, I think we should invest the time to ask of that. And then especially if we're going to make such a huge investment, but I also think we should consider the foundations and elsewhere before we sign. Thank you.
Thanks. I just have a couple follow-up questions, and some of these might be better suited for when we have Dustin here to speak to us. One of my questions, just to stay on the same line topic, is around our MOUs. Have we standardized them across agencies? So are we at the point where we have an MOU that's consistent across each?
The MOU that we use for the SROs we still are refining the language for the 24-25 school year, but the MOU with Carbondale, Basalt, and Glenwood PD departments is the same.
Okay, great. And then that was going to be my exact same suggestion and question is, does that MOU include requirements around training, expectations that are in alignment with our resolutions, policies, all of those things? Because I think that was something that was missing previously. And so I'm hopeful that these contracts that we're entering into will include that alignment.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, and I know we're kind of jumping into the conversation on like safe haven policy and regulation. I can tell you that our 3 chiefs of police have been part of that process. And so they know what we're working on and what's coming before you all. And frankly, a lot of the language from the existing MOU informed those policies and practices. And so I don't know exactly if the MOU has their training requirements in it. Okay, perfect. And we can flesh that out of what that entails for you all. And we could certainly, I mean, you'll see in the regulation, there's language from the regulation that will need to be integrated into the MOU, but it won't be a surprise to any of our chiefs of police.
Yeah, and I would just encourage us to include, you talked about calibrating these positions, getting on the same page, including any of that language that we can in those documents so that we continue to be on the same page moving forward. This work that we've done getting there isn't lost as we see turnover and changes in positions. And then my other questions, one, I know that our new, that Dustin's position is new, and I'm curious, as a board, if you have feedback for us on the value add of that position. Obviously, we allocated the money for that last year. And so as we head into budgeting again, I think it's important for us as a board to kind of hear how that's worked out, what the value we see in this role is, and hear specifically from you all about that.
Can we answer a little bit right now?
You can answer a little right now, or we can save it for next week.
So that's the bulk of the presentation that we're gonna have
Great.
in a couple of weeks is Dustin and me bringing kind of what he's done this year and the gaps that have been filled. So
We'll hold it then for next
hold it.
time around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's probably
Yeah.
best.
And then my last question. On slide 10, we identified one of our strengths as our procedures and drills. And I think one of the things that we heard last year after the swatting incidents was the level of miscommunication across agencies. And I'm curious if that's something that you feel has been corrected, if we are on the same page with the multiple different emergency response agencies that we have, and just the complex cross of jurisdictions within our district, and have we begun to identify a solution for that?
I think.
Save it for next week. Okay.
Save it. Yeah.
I'll save it.
Perfect.
Okay, so we'll move into 5 minutes of open board discussion. And again, thank you all for all of your work on this. I know that this is a huge undertaking to engage in these forums with the community, but I think it was super important for us to do.
I did have one follow-up question. I wanted to ask for that training that we have set up as the training plan for 24-25. When is that training gonna happen for like, is it gonna happen for all staff? Is it gonna happen for leadership and new teachers? Is there gonna be, I guess I want
Do you mean on the front, like the safety, security, the entrances?
to,
Yeah, I'm curious too, which training.
oh yeah, I guess it's the secure entrances, and then I thought there was another one. Was there not another one?
There's a whole lot of
There are a
training in the
bunch,
safe
yeah.
haven regulation.
All of the training. Pick one.
I would say this, the specific ones related to this superintendent report, Dustin will flesh out for you next month of like what that training is going to look like for the entrances and exits and how we're going to communicate that.
You're telling us that we're all over eager tonight.
It's good. I mean, I think that these questions are it's a testament to how important this is and how
Yeah.
foundational this is, that we all feel that we really want to be clear. We really want to know what we're doing, and we want to know that we're doing it well. They're great. They're great questions.
Anything else from the board?
Just on the, sorry, Kenny, were you gonna? On the mental health funding piece, I think we talked about this a little bit, but if there's a role for the board to play in supporting you and going to the jurisdictions for asks around mental health funding and helping make the case for that, those funding renewals or increases to threatened reductions in funding, then just let us know.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And I think there is a role for you all. So I'd say stay tuned. I think it would be helpful in the past. I don't think the board's been very involved in that, but it's really been a conversation with me, Student Family Services hat with town councils, but would really love that we take that to more of a board to board conversation about the work.
The only other question I have is if we end up funding more, if we end up staying at our funding that we are now, and I think you touched a little bit on it about the amount of services that we receive. But I'm also curious, because I think I've heard about like sometimes they're short-staffed at a certain police department and the SRO is pulled to do town duties. And what kind of expectation do we have as a school of this amount of time, or when they come in, or is it a schedule, or how is it that we can count on that support from the SRO? And is it an amount of time? Is it just when they feel like it's a good time to come in? And maybe that's something, Dustin, that you'll talk about next time also.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I'd be curious about what managerial authority the district has over these SROs, if any.
I think a lot of the answers to that question is in the MOUs. It does talk about who's the supervisor, what if there's issues and concerns, what do we do? I even believe that some of those time pieces are baked into the MOU. So I would say we could do two things. One, we could share with you the current MOU, which all the chiefs and our district agree needs revisions. So we could share that as a baseline, but let you know that like we're working on it and we're going to be tightening up things as we move through the spring. So would that feel right? Because I think that's where some of this would be answered.
I also think we should seek consistency within all of our SROs. I believe I heard you kind of mention that it might look different at different schools. So I think, just for the sake of us always being asked by families of, what do the SROs do? Like, I think it's important for there to be some semblance of consistency, whether it's a Basalt school or Glenwood school, on the expectations of SRO on our campus.
Yeah, thanks for that push. I would say that certainly the safe haven policy and regulation have been an important part of that. I think the MOU has been an important part of that consistency. And I like our chiefs work really tightly together. They're communicating all the time. And so they already have this tight alignment in the way they want to work together. Our families are asking for more of that consistency. And so I do think that we're on the right track with that work and the work that the board's doing. And I think the policies coming in front of you are going to even help further that consistency with service delivery. I would also name that the work of our executive director of schools, Jill Hathaway, this year in really ensuring that our disciplinary responses to behavior are consistent is a big part of it, because our SROs are service-minded individuals. And if we ask for help, they're going to help. What we often need to do is tighten up when we ask them to help. And I would say through the work that our deans of culture are doing, that our executive director of schools, Jill Hathaway, is doing, we've really tightened up with our school leaders when it is and is not appropriate to involve SROs in disciplinary responses. And so part of that's on us as well. And I think that we're also on the right track of really making that more consistent, more aligned, frankly, more transparent to families and the outward facing disciplinary tools that we've been able to share with families of when we have no choice but to involve law enforcement, or when there is some consultative role, or when it's not appropriate. So some of that's on us too.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we welcome members of the public who have signed up to address the board. There are 3 signed up tonight. The board allots 45 minutes for public comment. To respect the time of all who are present, speakers are asked to limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less. Reminder to all speakers to uphold our procedures for public comment. We ask that you be thoughtful and constructive with your comments, and thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. Members of the public who wish to share their views with the board may always do so in writing at any time. For this evening's public comment, we didn't receive any written comments. Our first speaker is Nina Asher.
Hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Nina Asher. I'm here representing RFCEA and our teachers in our school district. I've been helping with Anna and a bunch of other members create the CBC. And we are here today to thank you guys for all of your hard work, your openness, and your willingness to write this contract with us. It really means a lot to us teachers. We have been telling our staffs about this, and we have 250 letters from our teachers thanking you for all of your work, for the production of creating the H policy, your advice on the contract, and your willingness to give this great gift to our teachers to help us know our rights, to understand our place in this district, and know that we are protected and we're all on the same page. We really enjoy and are energized by this openness and this collaboration with you guys. So here, we'll pass out our letters.
Thank you. It's amazing.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anna Chavira.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ana Chavira, alumni of the district, previous parent, previous certified staff, longtime community member, and leader at Voces Unidas. In all of the above, I've always strived to ensure Latino voices are heard in our community and school district. Raising voices for a silent majority is important to me. Not only is raising a voice important, but ensuring the safety of Latino students in the district a priority too. For a school district to contract with the known hostile enforcement is troubling because it increases the vulnerability of immigrant students and their families. When we learned there was an active contract with the hostile law enforcement, we reached out to Dr. Cole. Today, I want to extend a thank you to Dr. Cole after agreeing to meet and being open and willing to have hard conversations. She demonstrated her commitment to ensuring the safety of Latino families, following through with her commitments, ensuring family safety is prioritized regardless of perceived context. She was receptive to feedback and continued communication. Dr. Cole heard our concerns as Latino leaders and made sure these concerns were being addressed and carried through with the use of the capabilities in her role. With this appreciation, I also want to encourage all board members, Director Kenny Tyler, Director Jasmine Ramirez, Director Catherine Kuhlenberg, Director Betsy Actor, Director Lindsay, to continue to support Latino students of the Roaring Fork using all the capability your role as board member allows. For example, fully supporting and reviewing the safe haven policy. It's a policy in which a lot of work and collaboration has happened behind the scenes. Petitions by Voces Unidas, leaders of the community, Dr. Cole, the Equity Committee have all had conversations to ensure the safety and well-being of all students and families in the district. Like the policy states in its first statement, the Roaring Fork School is committed to ensuring a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment for all students and families. This policy outlines our commitment to protecting the rights and well-being. I believe the policy does a great job outlining points and steps that need to be followed, or the previous statement is. I'm looking forward to continuing to play our role as an advocacy organization with issues like these, further highlighting the need for more public accountability to ensure we're acting in the best interest of all communities, not just some. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Araceli Garcia. She had to leave. Okay, thank you. The next business in order is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes routine personnel, minutes from our previous board meetings on 3/12/2024, policy JKD/JKE, regulation JKD/JKE-R, and the 23-24 certified salary schedule, including schedules A and B. Directors, are there any items that you would like to pull off of the consent agenda for a separate discussion and vote?
Salary for the, anyone want to pull salary for review of the staff memo? Everybody read it.
Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Can you please call the vote?
Director Tyler,
Aye.
Director After,
Aye.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Kuhlenberg,
Aye.
Director DeFreitas.
Aye.
Directors, you've just approved the consent agenda. The next business in order is discussion on new policies, IHAMA, KB, ADG, regulation ADG-R, and new section H policies, HA, HC, HD, HH, HL, and HO. This is a very large packet of policies, so I'm going to increase everyone's initial time to 4 minutes. And if we need to add additional time, we will. Typically, we try to keep this a bit smaller, but some of these are time sensitive and we need to get first read done as we're not taking action tonight. These are all 3 read policies. We will begin with Director Tyler.
Thank you, Director Kuhlenberg, for giving us extra time. I was going to ask for that, so that's helpful. Thank you. My first question is about KB, and in the fourth bullet of KB, it says the objective of enhancing parental engagement by setting objectives through participating in school and district committee and or groups. And first of all, I think that's great that we have that in there. And so thank you for including that. But my question is there any kind of metric that's going to be added to this to show whether or not this has been achieved and how it's being achieved?
Repeat which bullet?
So it's in the first bulleted section about the district will work collaboratively with families to enhance parental engagement by actively supporting schools and families. And it's the highlighted part, yes. And it says consulting with encouraging parents to have a voice in school and district planning and setting objectives through participating in school and district committees and or groups. It seems like this is always our objective, right? And so I'm curious of what kind of like metric that we have that we're going to add to this to make sure that we're following through and it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, right, in the current draft, there isn't a metric or a reporting requirement. I don't believe there, I mean, we absolutely could do that. We're gonna see similar language and pushes in the strategic plan in our, like, there's a indicator on partnering with
Right.
families. But it's not baked into policy yet. And so I think that's a fair push to say, like, could we have some metrics to measure or some reporting on what this looks like? I think this board in particular does a good job asking that question of, who showed up at meetings. And I think the question at the heart of what we're always asking is, are we hearing from folks that represent the diversity of our school community, right? That's our like gold standard. Of course, then are we also leaning in and hearing more from the voices we don't typically get to hear from? And so I think that that's a push that we could grapple with in policy.
That would be great. Thank you. The next one is about ADGR, the Safe Haven Resolution Regulation and the Safe Haven Policy. And I just want to say thank you to all the people behind who wrote that and put that together. I thought it was really well worded. I really liked what it included, and I feel like it really states what we stand behind as a district. And I'm glad to see it in print, in policy, that it's something that we're stating we stand behind this. So thank you for doing that. And then I have a question about the part that says all front office staff and teachers will be trained on this Safe Haven anti-discrimination, diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism policies. And it talked about how teachers are going to be trained. It talked about how administrators are going to be trained and so on in different groups also. My question is, do we know yet what this training will look like? Is it like a read and sign type of thing, or it'll be an interactive training? When will this be done? I'm curious a little bit more about like the details of that.
Great question. We have not gotten into the specifics of the how and what does that look like. I think we have some great partners in place and teams in place internally that are going to look forward to pulling that together and those pieces together, but we haven't quite figured out the how. What it
Is
looks like.
that something we're expecting will be in place next year? Great. I'm good and look forward to hearing more about that. Jumping on to the H policies and specifically HA as the first one. I wanted to say I like the principles or norms that were created there. I thought those were really nice and how they were derived to support like this collective bargaining. I thought that was a really great way that was brought up. I do have a question about HD, the negotiation procedures. I'm curious a little bit about how that correlates with what is in the CBC. It seems like they're a little bit different. And especially I'm curious about how the procedures for conducting negotiation will be as agreed upon by the Board of Education and the bargaining group. I'm sorry, I jumped on a different thing. So there was the part in HD that says the procedures for conducting negotiations will be agreed upon by the Board of Education and the bargaining group. And I'm curious, is that a Board of Education thing that is supposed to have that discussion about what's going to be happening, or is that more a superintendent role, and the Board of Education's role is to then say, yes, we agree with that? But is it really the Board of Education who's going to be having that discussion with the association?
That's a great question. We could change that and make it the superintendent approved by,
I mean, we could. I think the current language just says that the board is ultimately agreeing upon them because the board is the signing party to the document. And so I think the current language doesn't specify who's negotiating over what that procedure will look like, just that the board ultimately has to agree as to what the process will be in the agreement.
And the wording sort of
Great.
seems like it's the board making the negotiation. And it just seems out of sync of how we're normally doing things. And then like, who is the board that's doing that? Is it one representative there that comes in, or is it?
Ultimately, the board will vote upon and sign any bargaining agreements, and those procedures will be held in it. So whatever board is in place at the time would designate people to be a part of that committee,
Mhm.
and then it would come back to the board as a whole for a vote and a signature. I think, yeah, we could elaborate upon it.
I think elaboration on that where it talks about the superintendent being the proxy for the board or something. I don't know, somehow that it seems out of place, but.
I
Anyway,
think in HC, there's language that, sorry, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, so that's okay.
Okay.
I only jumped in because Anna looked at me, sorry.
and then I have two more, so maybe I'll run over into our 5 minutes, but the next one was about HH and staff negotiation organizations. And where does classified and administrative fit in with that? And it seems like within HH, where it's talking about the board of will represent employees by the district for the purpose of bargaining and I don't know, I guess maybe I'm misreading that or I need to look again, but I'm curious of where the role is for certified and administrative in that
You mean for classified?
classified.
So, yeah, the intent of this, and actually I was gonna say that C regulation HHR, a recommendation from our CVC team was to send that to the contract instead of see the regulation, because the contract explains kind of why RFCEA would be the bargaining agent for certified. I think you're asking a good question about like, how does this apply to classified negotiations or administrative negotiations? And I think what we were hoping to do is just create a space to say, if there is a group that is recognized as a convener to represent an employee group, the board has to recognize that group. And I think it just leaves the door open to classified. If classified wanted to get organized and identify a group that would serve as its representative through a bargaining process, this policy would need to be revised by the board. Does that sound right? I'm kind of checking for.
So I guess that last paragraph there, then you're saying an HH gives classified and administrative perhaps like their own in to negotiate their.
I would say what it does is it creates a space for that, like we have a classified process, but we don't have a recognized bargaining group that's representing classified employees. Like there's a process, but we don't have a third party organization or a union like we do for certified that stepped into that role of saying, we're going to coordinate, we're going to represent. And so we're working those processes in a different structure. But I think if in the future, any of those other employee groups wanted to have a similar type of exclusive representation, then what that would have to look like is they would have to, they'd be working with admin to come and bring a policy revision to the board saying, hey, this union group has identified the classified employees have agreed, have voted, have decided that this is the group that they want to represent them. Can we make a revision?
I get that, and that sounds good. I just am confused a little bit, I guess, by that first paragraph still. It says the groups identified below or the organizations identified below, and it says bargaining on behalf of any group employed by the district.
So this is to recognize that the RFCEA has the authority to bargain on behalf of a whole employee group, and in no other employee group are we recognizing that a single organization can represent the entire employee group. It also, the final paragraph retains the right of any staff to bring to the board issues or make presentations to them, but it doesn't give any other staffs that aren't RFCEA reps the authority to come and negotiate on behalf of that certified employee group. I think what Dr. Cole's trying to say is that if in the future you had a classified staff unionized and they had an agency or an organization, a future board would then update this policy to add a section B. And then they would add in section B for classified staff or for administrative staff. And this was important for the RFCEA that we preserved them as the bargaining agent in any future collective agreements, and in the current agreement, and to ensure that there wasn't any side bargaining occurring between the district and other certified employees that would undermine the bargaining that the organization was doing.
Right, and I understand that. I guess that first paragraph to me, on behalf of any group employed by the district.
It's because currently this is the only one recognized by the board as a group that can bargain on behalf of an entire group of employees. And so if you were to add a section C or a section B.
Okay, so
or
I
C,
understand it with the interest-based
then that
bargaining.
opening paragraph would make more sense. But currently, since there's only one, it does seem a little off. But the way it's written, it leaves the door open for future organizations to step in and fill that void.
I guess I was not reading the interest-based bargaining part of it as like particular to the interest-based bargaining. That makes more sense.
Does that
Thank
make
you.
more sense? And we've hit your 4 minutes. Thanks. Sorry. Director After.
Okay, thanks. I have a few questions, and they might come across as random because they're questions about several of the different policies. On ADGR, so the regulation, there's a line number 7, local organizations will also be trained on RFSD, safe haven, anti-discrimination, diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism policies annually. That seems unnecessarily vague to me. I feel like there's hundreds of organizations in this valley.
There's a really important missing word that you just named, which is partner organizations. So what that's supposed to name is that like buddy program.
Yeah.
And that's just a typo.
And so, will you, I guess a follow-up question once it's fixed is, you have MOUs with all these partner organizations and you'll be revising all the MOUs to be consistent with the safe haven policy? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thanks. I know I think that you've shared this with Garfield County. Have you shared it with Glenwood, Basalt, and Carbondale, because we have the relationship with them through the SROs. Did you get any feedback from those jurisdictions besides Garfield? So Glenwood, Basalt, and Carbondale, did they have any concerns or did you get useful feedback? And then are you planning on sharing it with Eagle and Pitkin, or are those not relevant because we don't share SROs with them?
Correct on Eagle and Pitkin. So
Okay.
they haven't been part of the process, but our 3 chiefs of police have been really involved in this and helping come to the refinement and clarity that you're seeing right now. So they definitely had pushes on various drafts and recommendations as we talked through it, areas where they wanted some clarity. And so what you're seeing as a result of those consultations. So those 3 chiefs of police have been really part of this process.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have on ADG. On KB, and I know I'm on the committee, the Family Advisory Committee, and so go to some of their meetings when I can. It looks like it's changed a lot, maybe since I was at the last meeting. There's one sentence that stood out for me, and sorry if this is nitpicky, but it struck me a little odd. It's on page page 2, like 2/3 of the way down bullet, it says schools will respect that families are the experts in their child's education. I actually sent my kids to school because you guys are the experts in my child's education. I'm not an expert, which is literally why we're here. So I just find that to be an odd statement to say as like a statement of fact in policy.
I appreciate that, Director After. I think what we're getting at here is that we want to respect the fact that families know their kids best. And that
I think that's a
families-
different
Yeah.
statement. And I agree with that statement.
Mhm.
That's my feedback on KB. Is there a staff memo on KB?
I think there was one in last month. There was a KB slash, there was a staff memo when we first saw it. So that's why we did it.
It's right under policy review. It says staff memo for new policies. I'm on KB.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan. Okay, didn't see that. Okay.
Okay.
Those are my only questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Ramirez.
So I wanted to first on KB. The last sentence of the first paragraph says, or are parents of migratory children. I think we should add guardians there. Or our parents or guardians or something.
Okay.
I know we talked about this in policy committee, but I'm going through this one again right now, and I just noticed, on the second paragraph, the last sentence, it talks about the partnership between the district students and families. And I know we spoke about how we wanted to make sure we included schools and staff. So I would like to see if we could please include that. I just think it's important for us to ensure that this policy is setting us up for the expectation that schools and staff are included. Then for some reason, the first time I read it, I understood it, and right now that bold sentence, the district will work collaboratively with families to enhance parent engagement by actively supporting schools and families. I don't know why. So I rewrote it. I'm not sure if this is helpful, but the district will actively support collaboration between families and schools to enhance parent engagement.
Can you pop that language in
Yeah.
comment?
But I just typed
Thank you.
that.
No, I definitely hear what you're saying when you just read it again there.
Oops, no, suggestion.
Thank you.
And then there was one more. That sixth bullet point after that sentence. It says ensuring accountability of all staff and working with families as academic partners. I don't know if that's gonna be a regulation but I'm wondering how we're gonna ensure accountability.
That's a great question. I think it goes back to, I mean, to me, I'm going to put that with Director Tyler's questions on like, where are the metrics on this sucker? Because I think you're both pulling out some pieces of like, how are you measuring that? How are we gonna, where is that accountability piece? So I'm gonna, my notes, put that on the like, flesh that out one in particular in terms of how, what does that look like, and getting a little more on. Yeah, those specific pieces.
I mean, and I'm fine if we need to change that word, but I think my biggest thing is if we're gonna say there's gonna be accountability, then there has to be proof that that is being done. And so if there needs to be something that accounts for that. And then, okay, so that was it for KB. And then ADG,
See.
ADG. There was the maybe I'm reading it again right now and it's fine. So maybe I misread it or something, but I think the sentence I flagged for myself looks fine. So, I mean, I guess just to echo the sentiments from the rest of the board, I think that I'm happy we're both working on KB and ADG. I think they're important. And then I just want to thank Director Kuhlenberg and Director DeFreitas for their work on H section policies. Thank you.
Thanks. Director DeFreitas.
Well, the thoroughness of my colleagues is appreciated. A lot of my questions have been clarified already. So I just wanted to offer quick statements of support. The safe haven policy, I'm excited to see codified because what we learn, of course, as teachers and what we know as parents is that students who don't feel safe can't learn. Starts there. And that sense of safety comes from knowing that they have a secure place and to just learn. They don't have to worry about stresses of the outside world, the dangers to family separation, which is an existential threat when you're a child to even consider. So I really appreciate that we are putting the language into this that will be clearly and consistently reflected out through our MOUs and clearly messaged to our community and the value behind it. So I'm firmly in support of that. I also appreciate just the tremendous amount of time that has gone into the development of the H section policies, conversations with RFCEA, along with their continuing work with Dr. Cole on developing the collective bargaining agreement. I just value so much our district's position that we respect teachers as professionals with the ability to demand autonomy in certain places to enact their profession and to have clarity of their roles and the expectations on them. And to just see the outcome of the work that they put into this interest-based bargaining every single year to make sure that all those resources are transparent and accessible to every teacher, of course, is an equity issue as well. So I think that the H section policies do have some polishing to do with the feedback that's noted from various folks on there. I think, so I'll hold my line items discussion until we get to maybe second round there.
I want to echo the thanks for the safe haven policy. I think this is overdue, and having it put together in such a close to final format and presented to the board in this way has been extremely wonderful as a board member to see this work being done and to be a part of it and to support it. I can't describe how excited I am about it. I mainly have questions around KB, and I apologize for missing the policy committee last week. I have concerns with the way that we're listing out statements and bullets. It really concerns me from the perspective of accountability, and it feels like this policy is far too deep in the weeds of day in, day out activities of our staff for policy level language. It's also unclear as a reader, we have an opening statement and then we list 10, 15 bullets, but what's the expectation? Is the expectation that every staff member adhere to every one of these bullets? Is the expectation that the superintendent is ensuring principals are like, there's just not a clear expectation written out, and it isn't in line with our other policies and the way that we structure them. And so I just want us to be careful about going down the route of structuring policies this way and getting so far into the weeds on some of these specifics. I don't disagree with anything that's in them other than the sentence that Director After pointed out. Because I 100% agree that you are the expert in your own child, but your own child, they're just two different things. I agree with her on that point. But I just think we need to rethink how it's structured, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me from an accountability perspective. Like, a board reads this and how can they enforce that this is happening? It's not just the specific pieces, it's the overall measure of these bolded sentences followed by, or the overall structure of these bolded sentences followed by all of these bullets. That makes sense. I just think we need to think about that and restructure it. So nothing specific, but hopefully we can work through it and bring it back on second read and have it be a little more cohesive and readable as policy. Everything else I'm excited about. I'm excited to get the H policies through first read. Thank you, Director Heitler, for asking some pointed questions on those. I think that's important because we've done some work in a vacuum on them. So it's good to get some other eyes on them and get that feedback. And yeah, everything else looks good. So thank you. We'll move to 5 minutes of open board discussion. If we need more time, we can add more time.
Yeah, I'll go first. I agree with your assessment on KB. I think I'm struggling with it a little bit because it seems overly long relative to some of the other ones that we have. I think as a board, we've communicated that in the last few months that the shorter and more to the point policies are more effective for us. I don't speak for everyone here on that, but I have noticed that we have had that discussion before. And I think that definitely applies here. I do struggle with understanding the purpose of this policy to some extent. And I know that it's, I think it's state mandated. I think we have to have it, but I think the way it's written, I struggle to see the value of this policy. So.
I do have one more question I would like to ask about the H section policies. Is the HO, the impasse procedures. And I guess I'm still struggling just a little bit to understand how it is that the board takes over for the district when there isn't an agreement that can be reached. And I understand that the board is the one who says yes or no at the end, but I think it puts us in a difficult situation where we're like taking on the district's side in a sense against another opinion. And I think it puts the board in a difficult position to say, like, we're district people versus we're teacher people, and putting us in a position where we're having to like make our stand. And I understand in the end, it is our decision whether or not we accept something, but I just think I'm concerned about that. And then I have another thought, but.
So I think in this instance, like in many other instances, when the district is engaging in contract, the board ultimately is the party that's entering the contract, and we're entering it on behalf of the district. So we are representing the district. I understand the concerns of us having to take a position of district first teacher. And I think that if we're at impasse, we've already taken a position because the board's already weighed in and told the superintendent, this is where we're going to fall. And we think you should take this position or that position. So if we're at impasse, we're past the point of us, I think, switching positions. We're already in disagreement with the other party if we've gotten to impasse. I felt that it was important for us to include an impasse procedure because in some larger districts, there are rights given to bargaining organizations in the event of impasse, like striking, like, other extreme measures. And we wanted to make clear that no one here is interested in going down that route. We want to resolve it in a way that seems fair and moves forward the work that we're all here to do. So
I hear where that is, and I can understand that. I also just feel like it can create a harder stance line by the teachers also saying we don't have to ultimately deal with the district because we can jump to the board in a sense.
Well, so the board's going to agree in the bargaining agreement to the process for interest-based bargaining or collective bargaining is what we're calling it now. And so there are pretty strict structures of what the route is procedurally that we have to take. So I don't think there's the ability just to jump past that. I guess, again, just if we're at impasse, we as a board are already in opposition
I hear that.
to the other party. And so I don't think it's going to force us or force the board that's in place to have to take that position. Because to get to impasse, we've already declared that we're there.
And one last question I have is about the part where like the AAA, the American Arbitration Association, do we have local members of the AAA? And can we get 7 people together, as this policy is saying? Do we have the ability to do that?
Yeah, there certainly are here and in Denver, the Denver. area.
Okay. And then lastly, that part with about the AAA, it seems like that's in contrast to the CDC, where it was talking about how they would use the other one, which I'm not coming up with right now, the FMCS as the first.
And I do want to make clear that the grievance procedure in the CBC is separate from the impasse procedure that's in policy. The grievance procedure would be about, that would be how they would grieve if we violated the contract. So they're saying the district is not adhering to what they agreed to do within this contract, then they would go through the grievance policy that's outlined in the CBC. If we're in bargaining and we can't come to agreement to enter into a new contract, then we would invoke impasse.
I see. That's different, the grievance versus.
Yeah,
the
they're two
impasse.
different things.
Okay.
Which
thank
is
you.
confusing because they're largely the same.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion to extend this 2 minutes?
Yes.
Can you
I
use that?
second your motion.
I remembered. So ADG, on, numbers 2, 3, and 4, it says we. And it should say the district. And I was like, where did it go? What was I looking for? And so I think we need to update that. The we's in this.
Do you think that it should say the district or the board, since this is policy?
Well, they put,
I think the district in 1 and 2, potentially it should be the board.
yeah, because 5 and 6 have the
And
district.
3, potentially yeah.
So I think we need to make sure it reads how it should,
Okay.
whether it's the board or.
Let's confirm that. Let's go through it in policy committee, just to
Okay.
make sure that we're in agreement that that one's a district, this is the board,
Okay.
that's just, that's okay.
And then on 5, that first sentence, the district shall not adopt or implement policy, blah, 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 that excludes students from school based on, I think there's a word missing there.
That excludes students from school based on their or their parents or guardians' actual or perceived immigration status.
Oh,
Reading it was like school-based
Yeah, I was
activities or
like,
school.
what?
I think it's just from school generally.
so yeah, we need to hide something. The district,
I think we're so used to reading school-based
I know.
X, Y, or Z that
What?
for us, it catches you for a minute. I think the general public in person would not get caught there.
I feel like we should put something there, like 2 lines or something, because it's still, well, I don't know, to me, I get what it's supposed to say now that you've explained it to me, but I still just, I don't know, didn't read right.
Very long.
Yeah, we're gonna bring this back to policy committee, so
Yeah.
whatever. Betsy, did you have something?
Nope.
Anyone else before we round this out? And this is the first of 3 on these.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on. Let me get back to my correct tab here. Okay, the next business in order is a resolution regarding the board's commitment to conducting an equity audit. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution regarding the board's commitment to conducting an equity audit?
I move that the board approve the resolution regarding the board's commitment to conducting an equity audit as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
We'll now have 2 minutes for discussion before taking a vote. We'll start with Director After.
Sorry, just grabbed my notes. I don't have any questions about the substance of the resolution. I was just curious as to why we need a resolution, and if you could explain to me like when we decide to do a resolution for something versus not.
Would you like to, since you wrote this one?
Yeah, so this resolution stems from our recently passed equity policy. Within the policy, it states that we're gonna make an effort to have an equity audit prior to our strategic plan that takes place. And because this year is sort of like an off year, we're approving the strategic plan prior. to having an equity audit. We wanted to make sure that that happened in alignment. So that's why we have a resolution. There's just, I guess, for our board to be aware, there's 3 different types of, I guess, things we're able to accomplish as board members. There's a resolution, there's a proclamation, and then there's obviously policies. So a resolution is more so for us to be able to push the district, make a statement to go forth in a direction. A proclamation is typically done to honor something or someone. And then obviously the policies are to codify what we believe within the district as our values in writing. So this policy, this resolution stems from us wanting to make sure that we codified the commitment to an equity audit to take place in alignment with the strategic plan that we're going to approve.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Nope.
Director Ramirez.
So just really grateful for everyone's time. Director Tytler and I took some extra time to add whereas in there in regards to emergent bilingual students. So I appreciate the commitment and the time everyone took on in giving this resolution enough time for us to be able to not just go through, but to be able to do. I feel very confident that our team is going to execute this in the coming months, and being able to hire a third party to do this and to really review what our schools and our district looks like in regards to equity, to really help support not just the Equity Advisory Council, the Equity Steering Committee, our leadership, our strategic plan, and everything that's going to take place. I just believe this is really important for alignment across the Roaring Fork schools. So thank you to everybody who gave and supported this.
Thank you. Director DeFreitas.
Yeah, my comment doesn't have anything to do with the language. I think it's just a procedural comment. Does this go out for an RFP?
That's a great question. We have policies on how we would do that. We've started exploring partners that would work with us on this. And we'll certainly use the language in here to guide those conversations of what we're looking for. We'll use the strategic plan. But I think in order for an RFP, we got to get over $50,000.
$50,000 threshold. So if we expected the contract to be over $50,000, we have procedures that have to be followed in the RFP process.
Yeah, I think I'm just interested in making sure that, we have transparent use of funds here, and that because not to say that I think what I'm just interested in is it's hard to have an apples to apples conversation. I'm not familiar with a lot of organizations that over time have provided equity audits. You can say, oh, well, this one's done a good job and this one's not. Maybe I just need to see some examples to know what it is that we're going to get out of this and how we can sort of measure value and use of taxpayer funds in that way, just because it's hard. I haven't been able to find something comparable to look at, but I probably just missed it, and I'm happy to look at other resources that you guys have seen already.
Why don't we, as we go through the process of identifying a partner, I'll just make sure that we're updating the board on this is what we're looking at. These are examples of what they've done in the past. There's certainly metrics that we're thinking about as we're looking for a partner to do this. Again, this kind of language helps. Our strategic plan is going to help. But why don't I just keep you guys tight in that loop of what that's looking like in that contracting process? All right.
Yeah, and if you do see an example of one that's been conducted in another school district that looked particularly useful, or you're thinking, I want ours to offer these same metrics or the same structure of feedback. I liked this part, but not this part. That would be useful to me as well. Also, just so I can know what to expect and look forward to.
Director Tytler.
I would just like to appreciate Director Ramirez putting this resolution together and the time it took to thoughtfully have that put together. And I would like to thank the district in general as being willing, but more than willing, be a partner in looking at what it is as a district best serves our majority minority population, and putting that in the forefront of our discussions and continuing to make that a thing that we are looking at and how we can better it. So thank you.
I'll round us out by echoing Director Tytler's thanks to Director Ramirez for taking the lead on this and getting this drafted and taking time with the board and with staff to get through this and get us to a place of agreement. And and also thank the district for identifying this as a step in our process moving forward in strategic planning. And using this as a tool to name the issues so that we can effectively address them and make things better for our students and staff. So thank you for that. We now have 5 minutes of open discussion. If anybody has other comments, questions on this?
I just wanted to add that to Director DeFreeze's point that typically we haven't seen, like aside from the hiring process, we haven't put out as a board any RFPs, like we haven't been the ones to receive them. So I didn't think to include that of like us being the ones that were hiring for this. But the reality, well, in the policy, it's the superintendent's job to hire. So, you know, I think I too would appreciate, just as we open it up, the opportunity for us to be made aware, just so that we can also engage with those partners that we may know of, or those schools or directors that we may know of across the state and across the country that might have some people who would want to apply to be able to provide us with the service. But yeah, I definitely think that that's something we should consider just moving forward, of like, especially things like this when it comes to a strategic plan. Even, you know, how does the board get involved in that process? I think it's important. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Are there any intervening motions to amend this resolution before we call the vote? Can you please call the vote?
Before I call the vote, I want to apologize for the Spanish translation not being included. That'll be added first thing tomorrow morning. That was an oversight. I apologize. So calling the vote, Director After,
Aye.
Director Ramirez,
Aye.
Director Kuhlenberg.
Aye.
Director DeFreitas,
Aye.
Director Tyler. Aye.
So procedurally, we typically read out resolutions and proclamations also. And Director Ramirez, would you like to read this one?
Sure. Okay, resolution regarding the board's commitment to conduct an equity audit. Whereas the Roaring Fork Schools District Board of Education is committed to fostering a learning environment that is inclusive, equitable, and provides all students with the opportunity to achieve their full potential. And whereas the board recognizes the potential existence of systemic barriers that may hinder the academic success of certain student groups, and whereas an equity audit is a comprehensive systematic review of a school district's policies, practices, and outcomes to identify and address any existing inequities that may disproportionately impact specific student populations. And whereas emergent bilingual students in the Roaring Fork School District with limited English language proficiency have different linguistic and academic needs, the board believes programming to meet these specific needs should be explored. Whereas conducting an equity audit in alignment with strategic planning allows the board to make informed decisions that address the root cause of these inequities and ensure all students have equal access to a high-quality education. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of Roaring Fork School District affirms its commitment to achieving educational equity for all students and commits to conducting a comprehensive equity audit of the school district. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education of Roaring Fork School District directs the superintendent to develop a plan for the aforementioned equity audit, which shall include a clear definition of the areas to be reviewed, such as student achievement data, course offerings, disciplinary practices, and resource allocation, the process for conducting the audit, including data collection methods, stakeholder engagement strategies, and the selection of an independent third-party auditor, a time frame for completing the audit by the end of 2024, commits to utilizing the findings of the equity audit to identify and address the systemic barriers hindering student success, inform the development of future strategic plans that promote equity and close achievement gaps, establish clear benchmarks and metrics to track progress toward achieving educational equity, directs the superintendent to provide regular updates to the board on the progress of the equity audit and the implementation of its recommendations. Be it further resolved, the board allocates sufficient resources, including personnel and any necessary external expertise, to effectively conduct the equity audit. Be it further resolved that the final audit report be made publicly available and its findings and recommendations shared in a public forum with the Roaring Fork School District community.
Thank you. All right, the next business in order is board reports and comments. We'll begin with Director Ramirez.
Board reports and comments. What have we done?
We've all taken a few weeks off.
I was able to go to the Glenwood Springs Middle School Accountability Committee. I think it was like a week ago. And was really happy to hear that they feel good about their budget for next school year, and they're still trying, I think they're still waiting to hear back to see if they have a new principal or if they might need to do an interim again. So I think just crossing fingers and lighting candles, hoping that, you know, obviously I think we need to continue to talk when it comes to housing new people that want to come to our district. Like, that has to continue to be a priority for the board and the district, so that we can not only retain our staff, but also bring in staff, especially, you know, people that we really want to hire and be part of the team. And I think, well, we had policy committee. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, we had our finance committee. We had our first finance committee, which was great. Thank you to Chief Markham for his time on that. I'm very excited to see what he's been working on. I think it's going to be good for the district for us to not only launch that finance committee, but also like have consistency as we move forward. I'm very grateful to the team and to this board for us prioritizing what we really want to see get done and be reviewed. And yeah, it feels really great to finally have that be a thing in this district. So thank you to the team.
Thank you. Director DeVrades.
Yes, I did take a month off. No, well, on that note, I just wanted to recognize, we are entering another busy season for the board with budget decisions, which are not small and have tremendous impact on the community. And I look forward to committing to the level of transparency with those conversations, which takes extra effort from staff as well. I think we did get a brief recharge in the last month. I hope that students and teachers might have had a good spring break as well. And that nobody got the whatever junk was going around the school the Saturday that spring break started, because that's definitely happened to me in the past. And I think other things that I'm involved in moving forward is communications committee with Chief Lannon will continue through the end of the year. And I think that's about all I have to report right now. Great, thanks.
Thank you. Director Tyler.
I attended a Colorado River BOCES meeting where a new board was seated, and we had new president elected, and we were able to talk about issues related to budgeting, being able to talk about how we're being invoiced, when those invoices come, and trying to dial in on a contract that we as a district have with the Colorado River BOCES and what kind of services are provided, and trying to really nail down some different number type things that have been a little bit in flux and not super clear. And so we're really just trying to streamline the process of communication and staffing and questions like that. And then we have every other week, I think it is, meeting within our district, who's a group who's talking about what it is that we're wanting to communicate with our BOCES. And so those issues can be brought up to BOCES to put ourselves in a position of a good place with our BOCES. And then also the Meadowood housing continues to go really well. They're pretty much on time and on budget. So those are two fine pieces of information. And they always are some little thing that's popping up, but it seems like our contingency as far as what we're spending and what is costing more than you would think there was is running pretty good in that case, that we're maybe only a little bit more than halfway through our contingency, and we seem to be sort of further along than that. in general on the project. And they say, once you're out of ground, that's the biggest risk of things going wrong before that. But the places are looking great. They're pretty much almost looking done from the outside. They're finishing up a lot of the inside stuff now. Paintings being talked about and putting in appliances. And so seems like those will be ready to go, one building prior to school starting and 2 buildings in September.
Thank you. Director After?
Not much to add to what Director Ramirez shared about the Finance Committee meeting. We had our first one, and future meetings will be on, I think, the second Monday of the month. And we've got a good agenda and set of topics to cover coming up to budgeting season. And so thanks to the team for putting that together and meeting with us. And I'm looking forward to more. I think there's I haven't seen many Family Advisory Committee meetings come up on my calendar recently, and I do think the next one conflicts with the CCS's big event, which I scored a ticket to. So I'm gonna miss the Family Advisory Council meeting for that.
Thank you. I also feel like I don't have too much to update you all on. I did have a school visit at Basalt High School last week, so thank you to Principal Hartman and Vice Principal Rios Vera for welcoming us in. There's some really exciting stuff going on there. It was a really great visit. So it was wonderful to be in there just to celebrate all that they're doing and see what's going on in the classrooms. I wanted to note for our new board members that it is graduation season right around the corner. And as board members, we attend graduation and hand out diplomas. Sometimes we speak at the events. So I did just email Chief Landon to get us going on that process, but another little thing you have to look forward to. It's actually super fun and exciting. High school, high school graduations. So we should be seeing those on our calendars shortly. And it's a great way to cap off our year. And then also wanted to note just an update for the board that we have our June retreat coming up. So if there are particular topics of interest that you want to make sure that we address, please do let me know, because we'll begin planning that before I realize that it's happening and that it needs to be planned. So if there's something in particular, please reach out and let me know. Otherwise, we have a menu of topics already that we've been thinking about including. We're going to move on to appreciations. Do you have something to add for updates? Okay.
I had a URA meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I had my
renewal.
urban renewal authority meeting on Monday, which I just wanted to make sure I update because it doesn't come often. We are trying to move forward with the mall, which I don't know if everyone knows, but the mall just became a childcare. Well, they have a childcare facility there now. And I just think it's important, especially as we consider the conversations around housing and around all of our needs within the district, to consider possibly in the future having a conversation about what that space or our needs could look like in regards to that space that just sits there. And then I really wanted to mention one more thing that I keep forgetting. This escapes me, the CASB thing I'm on. Federal Relations.
Yeah, the federal something.
Yeah, the Federal Relations Network met while we were on break, and they want to come to the Valley. And so what will happen is they'll invite all of the Colorado congressional delegation, the Colorado representatives, senators, and House representatives to come to the Valley for a tour of what we have to offer here. And so, I am very excited at this opportunity. I think this is a really amazing opportunity for us to represent not only rural Colorado, but our Valley Mountain Town Resort, some of the issues that we have here. So their date, I want to say, was possibly May. I have to check again what they wanted to do because they needed the federal delegation to be on break. But I do want to flag it for the team because I do think like as soon as they make whatever they need to do and confirm, like I really want us to like commit to hosting them and having them here. I felt like our housing that we have is a really good opportunity for us to like promote that for the rest of, they'll invite like the other districts, the other representatives. But I also think like if there's anything that you guys feel strongly about us promoting at the Run for Schools, then we should try. And then I think, you know, Director Kuhlenberg and I have had conversations on like hosting a valley-wide conversation with leadership. That hasn't yet happened. I'm glad it's happening with the superintendents, but we might want to consider inviting them just to have like a roundtable discussion. But I do think we should probably meet with them first to really hash out what we want to ensure alignment in some of our needs for all of the legislators that'll be here. Yeah, that's it. I'm glad I remembered.
May is soon.
May is very
Guys,
soon.
I know.
It's in
I need to
legislative session
confirm.
ending in Colorado.
So you
May
should
18th, right?
get us that date as soon as we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you have that date.
Yeah.
If you can get it out.
I
That's
will do
exciting.
that.
Okay, so we'll now move on to our final agenda item, appreciations, and we are starting with Director DeFreitas.
I would like to appreciate the media in the room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for working so hard to write transparently about education issues in our district and our neighboring districts. I know that there is valley-wide appreciation, but it is never the most thrilling beat to be on. So I just appreciate your dedication.
Director Tyler.
I would like to make two appreciations. One is to, and this was sort of brought up by Dr. Cole already in her appreciations at the beginning, but all those senior students who have sort of like finished up their schooling duties of figuring out, maybe not still figuring out where they're going, but all those applications and scholarships and all the time and effort that they've been putting in the last many months. And I think there's a little bit of a feeling of yay and relief, but a job well done by so many people working hard with that. And I would also like to give a shout out to our principals in our district who right now, this is a time of flux, I think, for them, that FTE allocations are trying to figure out, and resignations and transfers and staffing. And it's just a difficult time for those people and a lot of important decisions they're making for the upcoming year. So thank you for all the work that you're putting in during this time of change.
Director After.
Thanks to the team from the district office and across the district who are focused on and spending a lot of time on principal hiring. Right now, I know that there's it's a tall order to get those positions filled. So thanks very much. I heard from a community member who was on a committee at one of the schools about how impressed she was with the entire process. So kudos to you and thanks.
Director Ramirez.
CMAS testing started, so thank you to everyone in our buildings who is taking care of our students and helping, whether it's bringing breakfast snacks or ensuring that the intercom isn't used during testing. I think, you know, I echo what all of my colleagues have mentioned, and I'm really grateful that our staff is able to be flexible in times like this where we have so many things going on, and we need good leadership at the top level to be able to steer us in all of our schools. So thank you to everyone, whether it's a para or a custodian or bus driver, that is helping ensure that everything is running smooth in our schools.
Yeah. And I'll round us out with a thanks to all of the enthusiastic teachers who taught this week about the solar eclipse and got our kids super excited about checking out this amazing phenomenon, and taught them the difference between an annular and a total eclipse and all the various facts. And specific to my schools, a special thanks to BEF for helping to make those activities possible, and providing supplies and extra volunteers and staff to get all the kids outside and engaged. We are at the,
I have a date.
oh, can you email it out to us?
Yeah.
Okay. We're at the end of our meeting, so if there's no further business and no objection, this meeting will be adjourned. It is 8:17 PM.